right, I'd like to call the meeting of the Wednesday, September 11th, 2024 meeting of the Essex Junction City Council to order. We'll start out with a moment of silence in observance of the 23rd anniversary of the September 11 attacks on the United States. Thank you. Are there any agenda additions or changes? See any? I don't have any myself. Council? No? Great. We will move on to, oh, one more thing. Sorry. This. In previous city council meetings, members of the public have made racist and anti-Semitic comments. These comments have disrupted presentations and were made during the public comment period. The city council does not condone such language and opposes it. Such comments, are deeply harmful and are entirely inconsistent with our community's values. While it is not possible to prevent harmful speech during public comments, the council will continue to condemn such comments publicly. And we'll move into public to be heard. It's the portion of the meeting where members of the public can bring questions, comments, concerns to the city council, and raise his hand shut up. So we will start online.
You know, I see the crowd online, and I figured if I didn't get my hand up quickly, yes, exactly, I wouldn't make it onto the line.
Understood.
Is it me? Okay.
No, it was me again.
Okay. Oh, Raj.
I know.
I am commenting because in light of what we've just, recently learned about Green Mountain Transit's plans to drastically change / eliminate the bus routes connecting and through Essex, I was sort of thinking that Connect the Junction might be put on hold for a little bit while we find out whether there's still any bus routes beyond early 2025. I mean, I do understand that a big portion of it is biking and walking, but the bus routes and Amtrak are also sort of interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to stab at that?
Just to point out that the service reductions that are in the plan thus far do some reductions on the number 2, but it's more focused on the number 10. And I would say the purpose of the project in terms of continuing to build housing where we are served by bus service is just as important, with the number 2 still operational with the amount of people that travel between Burlington and Essex Junction for work.
I'd agree with that, and just suggest for folks that are also concerned about GMT that input matters right now for GMT, but please also, once the legislative session starts in January and the committees for House and Senate transportation are set, to please remember, and you will be reminded, to make those same comments to the legislature about the importance of keeping public transportation.
May I ask a point B?
Sure.
One of the things that happened with separation is Essex Junction lost the senior van, and SSTA has picked up some of that, but with their requirements, please keep in mind as the council moves forward and we move forward, SSTA may end up no longer serving our people at all, because you need to be within X amount of a bus stop. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the room that has a question or comment for the council before we move on? Okay. Yes, you do. Hi. Sure, it's perfectly appropriate right now. If you just come up to the chair, right at this table by itself behind the camera, that'd be great. Just state your name for us.
Am I connected electronically?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Joanna Rankin, and I think you all have emails in your box from me from some time ago. I came to report that Burlington passed a resolution about 3 weeks ago that asks our congressional delegation to ask the Air Force to change the mission for the Vermont Air National Guard. And our delegation has the power to do that. That's very clear. It's also very clear that the harms that were from the F-35s that were outlined in the Air Force's environmental impact statement, whatever it was, with several versions, but going on 10 years ago, are almost precisely what we're finding now. The noise is noxious and disruptive, but it's also harmful, particularly to children and their educational and emotional development. The resolution is long and complicated, but it's mostly long and complicated in talking about the evidence for asking our delegation to seek a new mission for the Vermont Air Guard. So I'm here to ask you to take that resolution up. And is your procedure such that it can go on your agenda and perhaps be voted at your next meeting?
We can talk about it outside of a meeting.
Surely.
I've received your email. I haven't read the resolution yet, if I'm honest, but it's something we can talk about.
Well, maybe the reason that I am here will give you all some incentive to read it. And I don't think you need to read every little bit, because there's a huge amount of evidence there, and it's documented from the Air Force's environmental impacts and other sources. But the long and the short is that Burlington passed it, Winooski passed it. It's expected to pass in South Burlington next Monday, and it's now been tabled on many of the other communities in Chittenden County. So clearly, your passing it would give us give the committee that will interact with our delegation one more bit of approval, but it will also keep you in the loop and have Essex Junction's voice heard. So both of those things, I think, are good arguments for passing it along with the other communities that are doing it. So that's really my pitch. Any questions for me?
I don't have any. Does anyone else? No, but I appreciate you bringing this up again and redirecting us back to that.
Can I expect to hear from you about your decision about whether to put it on your next agenda?
Yep.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online? There's no one else in the room. If not, seeing no one else, we'll move on to 6A, Development Review Board update and presentation. I'd like to come up to the hot seat.
Oh, sorry. Oh, shoot. You're saying she can't hear. So we were out for a minute or two. We're all good out there, Amber?
You're good now.
Okay. All right, let me get the presentation started for you.
Yeah, I'll have to say, I asked staff to help me put together, the sort of the by the numbers piece, which was slide 3, and I got the whole presentation. So, and then they're not here, so I'll give it.
Well, it's in the pack and it's very straightforward.
Yeah.
Great
So,
job for, I give staff a lot of credit for putting this together, because I mean to do this pretty much every year, but it's you know, there's a lot of back dragging through the material.
Mhm.
We have a good time on the DRB. We've had great fortune to have quite a bit of development pressure. I feel proud of what we've been able to do based on the regulations and the attraction that the developers seem to have to the Essex Junction community. So hearing the discussion about the bus routes and how you want to have your housing along the bus routes, you know, that's all happening.
Mhm.
It's unfortunate that the bus routes are, you know, maybe soft, but maybe ridership can keep going as we continue to build the proper housing along those routes, because that's really how this is supposed to work. So.
Yeah, so I mean, I invite you to give us the highlights. It's in here,
Yeah.
And I think I know
Stop me when you've had enough, okay? Because you know how this can go on. So,
and yeah,
so the presentation was put together by Michael in the planning office. The first slide really just is showing where most of our projects and activity are happening, and as you know, it's no surprise. Maybe it is that a lot of development is still attracted around the Five Corners area. That's our village center, or city center now. It's a special area. It's already very dense, but the projects are coming, and I feel that they're of appropriate density to continue the evolution of this as a meaningful growth center in the state. It is one of the dominant, if you will, growth areas around. You know, you look at Chittenden County, the whole thing's growing, but as a concentration in an area that has historically been known for a lot of things, it wasn't really known for density, and now we're really seeing that come. So that's, I think that's been the fruit of many years of effort on the planning commission side, and the regulation have been in place for a long time. So it's nice to see this finally come. So by the numbers, we've been working on a number of conceptual site plans. Most of them we've approved. We do have comments on those that hopefully make projects better when they go through the conceptual side of you know, level of review. Final site plans, see, we got 4 of them approved. That's great. Zoning appeals, it's a little bit new for us. The DRB is a new organization here in the city. Previously, the zoning board took those. Now the DRB is doing them. So there's not a lot of experience on the board for how that happens, but staff's been very supportive, and we take each one very seriously to look at it, try and understand what's going on, and then apply our you know, regulations to it. So that's been interesting, and I know some of them are possibly still out there floating around being discussed and so on, but you know, that's important. We should be doing that. So it means that there are things that are happening that not everybody's on the same page about, and that's great discussion topics for the community. Let's see, the new housing approvals, that's really great. 167 units. If you look at the Regional Planning Commission, they're saying we're thousands of units behind what we need in order for this region to be, you know, housing sustainable and having affordable housing. So anything we can do there is really a bonus. I think some of the housing projects that we've approved are significant and extraordinary, and some other housing is let's say less. It's less robust, but it's filling a need in that it's going to come in for the renters, and so that's also important. You need all of that housing. And then there have been some commercial spaces there. Those are a little softer again than housing. Housing seems to be the place where the energy is coming, but a lot of these developments have commercial first floor, active streets. So we'll go over a couple of them, and again, I won't. You've seen the package, but for anybody else, This is a very infill piece down on Railroad Street. It's tucked in and went through a lot of iterations. There were some complications with what exactly is going on with the land around it, and streets that have been there by historic use, but not really don't exist essentially as a real street, but they're there. So took some work to get that one through. The design was felt to be adequately New England. You could see this in many mill towns and other places, so felt to be appropriate as an infill building, and we're looking forward to that housing. The Pearl Street project is down along towards Susie Wilson, so you've got a whole strip of those larger housing blocks down there now. This will add to that mix again, right on the bus route. So nice infill project there. And River Street was more of a there was more site contention about that. It's an older street. There's no sidewalk. How do we enforce our requirements to have a sidewalk? Who buys it? How does it get connected to other things? That was really the topic of that one. This is one of the nicer projects on Park Street. This will be down by the Park Street School access driveway there. That parcel has been under attempted development for quite some time, and it's really nice to see this one come in. The architect is the same architect that did the building at 4 Park here, so it's it has a higher level of design than we've seen on some other projects, and it's going to be a nice addition there. I think you're going to like it. That was also a fairly small one, just a minor renovation to an existing house. These things happen. There's really not going to be any exterior changes. Most people won't even notice it, but we take all size projects. And Lincoln Hall, of course, you're aware of the renovations to that upcoming. That project is going great. The contractor is preparing all the advanced submittals and showing us exactly what they're proposing to do, and we're making sure it matches the project documents, and they expect to be underway here in another month or 6 weeks. So that's going to be very exciting, and we really hope the community loves the project when it's all finished.
Right.
One more, just another, yet another building that removes some older housing down in the former Necky area, and brings it up to modern standards and adds quite a bit of density. So that's, again, almost no one will see this from any of the major streets. It's down in the middle of that development, but they've been consistently adding more units and replacing older buildings there, and this will fit right in. One more. So this is also down the way on Pearl Street a little. There was a switch that happened as one developer had a parcel, but not next to their other parcels, and they ended up flopping the 2 parcels. And I think we're gonna like seeing that tucked in where it goes towards Susie Wilson Road. So it'll add a slightly different look to the other buildings that are in place there, but because of the site and the narrowness and so forth, it's gonna look fine, and it's got some exciting architecture to go with. Thank you. Any questions?
I mean, sure. What are the challenges your board is having right now? Like what? I mean that really broadly.
Yeah, I don't know that we're necessarily challenged. I think we've been working with some of the same developers now for on many of those larger projects for let's say 5 or 10 years, and we're seeing consistencies in their approaches. Each has their own style, and we're trying to elevate some of the projects that don't have quite the same architectural value to them, and we're just pleased as punch to see the nice ones come in, and It's our goal to continue to elevate the architectural approach to these projects as we're able to. I would say the challenge has been, that the DRB is a fairly new board, and there's some experience and some time that just needs to pass for everybody to get up to full speed there, and have the depth. I mean, it's a tough job to take all the regulations and apply it to the regulations are written, so it's not like you're it's not the form-based code you're seeing in other places where we have pictures to work with. We have to really mentally understand what we're asking people to do. We're not part of the planning commission anymore, so we've divorced ourselves from we're writing the rules, now we enforce them. So I'd say that's it's a little bit of a hurdle, but not that much, because the members on the board, except for me, none of them are on the planning commission, so they don't know that back and forth yet. And it just takes a little while to develop an understanding of the regulations. So that's happening. Every meeting is better. I think, we've seen some staff turnover. That's working its way out. We've been fortunate to have great people that are helping us through from the staff side, and it's nice to see a full complement of folks down in that department. So we feel like we're in good shape.
How's the design review aspect playing out for your board? Is there,
we're
is there
so happy.
clarity? How is that developing?
Some of the building across, we'll just use the example, the building across the street from the fairgrounds, which is relatively new, was the last one passed under the old regulations, which did not have design review. So that building doesn't look anything like it looked in the presentation that the planning commission got when it was approved. Footprint's the same, image and visual is totally different. So now that design review has been expanded to include those major streets in the city, we're very pleased, because it means we don't have to allow that to happen again. We have a little more oomph to ask buildings to come in and present themselves well. We'll know more about what they are. We'll be able to tell if what's planned is going to fit into the neighborhood character and elevate our community instead of just kind of hit the low bar.
Yeah, because I'm looking at 227, 229. It looks a little like the one that went in at 197 Pearl, and a little bit like the hotel building that didn't have. And looking at it right now, I'm just sort of.
It's got more going on. You'll like it better.
Okay.
But those are challenges, and my response to that is it still needs to fit in. It still needs to have enough architectural development not to be just a box, and yet we don't necessarily want to discourage people who are willing to invest in our community and provide this needed housing. There needs to be a little bit of everything. So it's a fine line. Again, this is where a DRB with, let's say, a lot of expertise on it might have 3 or 4 people that say, hey, that's not good enough, we want more. But we don't have that right now. We'll get there. We're also working with staff back and forth to say, okay, what are the what level can we demand, or is there a way that staff can help us raise the bar, let's say, and that will also come in time. I think we're happy to have input from the community. The community hasn't really shown up at the meetings where, we still we're not really suffering for lack of input, but it would be nice to have input.
Yeah, it's challenging to get folks to show up for any meeting.
Yeah.
I think some of us probably hear a lot about what they'd like to see, and my response is always, I can go with you to a DRB meeting and.
Yeah. No, it's kind of a, it's a tough environment to show up in. A lot of people are uncomfortable doing that, but written things are great. We'll take written comments. We'll take whatever you want to offer. I'm saying this to the community now. Any input that people wish to give in whatever format is always welcome. I think, continued efforts to just say, we expect more. What does that mean? Can we describe that better? So we could go back and forth with staff and with the planning commission to say, we need more language in there explaining what we want. It's always easier to get what you want when you explicitly tell them, this is what we want. So.
Can I just add
Yeah.
something to that?
Sure.
I would really encourage folks to participate in the Connect the Junction project, because that's really where you can influence the regulations that will then inform the development community what they need to do in order to successfully meet our regulations. It is pretty tricky to come at a development review board stage of the game and try to influence what that actually looks like. So highly encourage people to really participate well ahead of the game, and Connect the Junction is really the right time to do that.
Colleen,
Just a quick question, John. Are the 167 units approved? Is that what all of the examples are after that? Are they included, or are those additional units to come?
I think that's summarizing the number of units in all the examples that we showed you. So at least what I asked them to do is just give me some numbers, like how many meetings did we have? What did we do in the meetings? How many approvals were there, and how many units were in that,
Right.
So I believe that's all one package. We'll start the clock ticking again now, or we'll keep adding to our yearly total, however we want to get it. But, that's a pretty good number.
It's a high number.
That's
Yeah.
fairly impressive. I know, some communities like Williston were starting to flip out when, they were approving more than 400 a year. And, of course, they have quite a lot of development over there that we've seen going up at around there. But,
But we're only 4.5 square miles.
yeah, there was a very large effort to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty proud of what we're doing. And since most of it's infill, I mean, we've had a lot of discussions. I've been back and forth between town planning and village planning, and there's more territory to work with outside the village. We aren't quite fully built out, but we're doing more infill and replacement buildings than we are new construction on a new site. So, it's a testimony to the rejuvenation and the desire to be here in Essex Junction that is driving this, and that's really exciting.
Chris, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to confirm that those numbers are the permitted numbers from the last 12 months. It doesn't mean that they'll all be built. In fact, there's one example in there that's never advanced to final site plan, and things like that happen even after they get approved. There are sometimes reasons why these things don't get built.
Okay, thank you. Any other Marcus?
John, I first say I really appreciate the work that the DRB is doing. I've really appreciated watching the DRB. My appreciation to you and Chris for putting up with my questions from time to time, because I learned something as I watched the DRB. So I really do appreciate the work that's happening. To go back to something you said in regards to that separation from the Planning Commission, what is the rapport like between the two committees? Right? How would you describe that right now? And is that something that we need to work on to help with? I know we as a council want to be closer to the committees. Therefore, I wonder whether or not you feel that same way.
That's a good question. I'll say that historically, as when we were one commission, we still felt eager to know what the trustees or the city council had to say. Like, we kind of work for you as the community leaders, so it's important for us to understand what your wishes are so we can try and, manage our efforts that direction. Some projects that the council is working on, like the Crescent Connector, we're not as involved in as maybe we could be, but that's, we're, if we're not directly involved because somebody else is already working on it, fine. The connection with the planning commission, I think we both feel like we're relatively new entities, that there are more carryovers on the planning commission membership wise, as in people that were on the planning commission that stayed on the planning commission. So they have better continuity than the DRB. And when we were a brand new board, I was the only new person, or the only person in the planning commission that went to the DRB. So pretty much the whole rest of the group was new. There was one zoning member that came on and are now off again. But I think it's time now for the planning commission and the DRB to get, we should be doing quarterly or every, twice a year, getting together. And we're also happy to do some kind of a joint meeting with you folks, which used to happen between the planning commission and the trustees. Every once in a while we'd have a joint meeting. So this is when I use staff, right? Well, I'll remind staff that would be great, because we're not going to schedule it on our own. Probably we really need a little, remind me why I'm doing another meeting. Oh, you're getting together with planning commission. Okay, great. So, we're going to want to see a little, just a reminder from probably staff that, hey, this needs to happen. You guys need to keep working together. So appreciate that question.
Thank you. And along those same lines, because obviously, as the planning commission kind of helping to review and design what that ordinance needs to look like so that we can then have that discussion and hopefully pass those appropriate things. I wanted to ask you, from your standpoint in having all of these conversations with developers, and especially in light of the fact that the state and we have said over and over again, housing is a priority, rules are changing around that. What are the developers saying are their biggest challenges in order to do this faster? Because I think one of the biggest problems that I see is the fact that while we say that there's this problem here, while we've changed some of the rules, and I'm not saying that for EJ, I'm saying that just generally speaking, the development doesn't feel like it's moving in a more rapid pace to even catch up with the problem that we have. So I'm wondering if you're hearing some common themes from developers.
I will give you, and of course, my profession as an architect gives me better access to all those people than maybe just the average DRB member. But the complaints have been similar for decades now, which is the permitting process is onerous and risky, and it takes years to bring something to market. You don't do this overnight. You've got a long process to go through. There's a lot of engineering, costs a lot of money. The people that are doing this have struggled to make the numbers work for housing for years. And then you add in the vagaries and variations in the economics, like the cost of construction. We used to complain about the materials, but now it's the labor. And, it's hard to find, construction labor. It's a very pricey market right now. So construction costs have gone way up since COVID. And added to the riskiness of just the process in general and how long it can take and what the objections can be and how Act 250 can play into it, has kept the lid on it. And, frankly, that's in some people's opinion, that's the whole reason they have Act 250 is to keep a lid on it. So there's a lot of cards stacked against developers. So that's, to put your foot in that pool and to say, I can play this game and I can put the money out that it takes to get the thing up to the, DRB level, it's not for everybody. And we've seen some of these projects that come through where it's just a 1 or a 2 person operation and they're only trying to do a few units, but the learning curve for how you get through the process is immense for those people. So you're really seeing a limited group of players that kind of know what they're doing and have a lot deeper pockets. And, that process itself is just going to take some time. So even if the state relaxes some of the requirements and the concept around Act 250, and there's a new map out now, the interim guidance on Act 250, that was just pretty interesting. It should loosen some things up, but the whole process is still going to take a couple of years for that to, begin to really translate into more units. So that's the way I see it. I think, we can all appreciate what efforts are being made, but it's not easy.
So I want to tease out one thing that you said there, because when you talk about the small operations trying to navigate it and such, I'm thinking about the specific new statutes that are now available so that housing lots can be developed, from that single family home into up to a 4-plex, for instance.
Yeah.
Is this challenge going to be faced by homeowners who may want to redevelop their properties into this kind of housing?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So all the TV shows that are out there you can watch about somebody, flipping a house or, adding on, that's actually created a lot of interesting supply side effort. Like, people want to do that. It's fun, or supposed to be. And so I think we're going to see more people trying to do that. And I think those rules are going to be a big part of it. It's going to make it easier for somebody to take a project and, say an existing house and adding at least an accessory dwelling unit or trying to do something. So that can be very successful. I think the regulations around that are going to be exciting to see what shows up. We have not seen that much happen, although I guess 1 or 2 of those projects did seem to be at that smaller level. But you need a lot of those projects to come. I mean, if you're going after 167 units, you need 150 people trying to do it, which is, we haven't seen those kind of numbers yet. So be interesting to see what happens there. And again, I think probably the biggest issue right now is just lack of capacity in the home building market. And I'm not talking about the guys that do this on a larger scale. I'm talking about that small scale again for this question.
Right. On the housing, you mentioned earlier, talking about the different types of housing that's coming. It sounds like you're seeing that variety of housing between what we would consider to be affordable. And I don't mean that necessarily in just a low income way, but like affordable for everyone, along with some market rate kind of housing that we're seeing moving in. If my recollection of what you said is accurate, let me ask you this. From the different types of housing that you're seeing coming into the community, are you seeing that the projects are also putting those types of housing in a particular area versus spreading it out evenly around our community?
Well, if we look at the slide that had the locations for this housing, you'll see that they're concentrated along the Pearl Street corridor. So you're seeing, down to Susie Wilson Road, that seems to have a pretty good pace now, where the smaller single family homes are being replaced by larger projects where you may go from, 2 or 3 housing units on a given site to 30 or 40, which is, a decent project. And we're seeing, the kind of the bigger, more elaborate projects actually happening right here in Five Corners. There were some conceptual approvals for, over by the Crescent Connector that hopefully those are somewhere out there. I forget exactly what happened to them, but there've been 2 more buildings approved on a master plan basis, but and the original renderings for those were pretty impressive. They were beautiful projects. They have not shown up again yet to, for their next phase, but those are conceptually approved in a master plan, so it'd be great to see those happen. I think probably now that the road work is done, we're gonna see some more development in that area.
Last thing, I promise. Only because of the fact that I get asked this a lot from constituents. I don't know if you've seen any concepts or ideas as to what may happen with the Lincoln Inn property.
There've been concepts for that for years. Some of which my office did, and that's probably 18 years ago now or something. So I don't know that anything's really taken off. I think the buildings that I was just referring to that were conceptually approved may or may not be entirely on that site. I think there's some couple of different sites back there, and maybe the rail, I forget exactly where they are on that site, but there have been a number of projects, I think, replacing some of the, like where the laundromat is. I think something was shown there, something back farther. We just haven't seen them come back.
Yeah, thank you.
Amber?
I just wanted to take a minute and express gratitude to you. We've known each other for 30 some odd years. I know your expertise, I've seen your design skills. I know your eye, so I'm very appreciative that you take the time to do this. And there's no one more qualified for the 2 Lincoln renovation than the guy who's been designing the building for decades.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take a minute and express our gratitude, my gratitude to you for this. And I understand that Greg Rabidou retired last month, so the building on Park Street will be his last design. So that's a big milestone too, and it's a beautiful building.
Yeah, thank you.
Gina, did you have anything you wanted to add? No, Chris? No, good. Don, thank you very much for joining us. I do hope we all get together soon.
See you next year.
Well, hopefully before that.
Before that.
It's just
Good.
around the corner, right?
Always a pleasure. We'll see a lot of you during the
Yes.
renovations. I bet.
See you in a hard hat soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
6B, discussion and consideration of establishing a governance committee.
So you've got a memo in your packet about this. Essentially, when the charter was, my understanding, you all can, but when the city charter was established, essentially the kind of governance structure mimicked very much what the trustees were, and so the charter also includes a requirement to take a look at the governance structure for the city, and that needs to be set up within 3 years of when the legislature approved the charter. So that timing is about February 2025. So what you've got in front of you is a draft purpose statement to be able to take a look at, and open to any comments that you've got on that, so we can go ahead and get this committee advertised and get it up and running. When I was putting this memo together, started to think about the timing in terms of if there will be charter changes that come out of this committee, the ideal time for getting that done is essentially by November of next year, in order to get it in front of the voters at the 2026 annual meeting to then get it going through the process. So that's how I've kind of crafted this, that essentially we would try to get this up and running and then have a work product back to the council by November 1st.
Thanks for bringing this forward. This was something that I pushed for the charter to have, because during the merger conversations and the drafting of that charter for the joint community and the feedback and all of the years leading up to it, it was really important to folks to have this conversation if we were going to get together. So I didn't want to drop that if we were going to separate. The only addition I'd make to this personally is some acknowledgement that part of my hope for this, and we didn't put it in the charter specifically, was some kind of acknowledgement that the reason behind this was to sort of be a more inclusive and engaged community, to reach people, to find a way to reach people that we're not already reaching, and to make this process more accessible. So I haven't wordsmithed it on purpose. I've looked at a couple other charter committee draft, mission documents, but something like fitting in some kind of message like Essex Junction as a welcoming community. This is straight out of someone else's who won't become clear, but home to a diverse population, including residents of all ages, ethnicities, nationalities, and backgrounds. And the city council wishes to explore governance structures to ensure the voices are equitably represented at policymaking tables, et cetera. Something like that, where we're being specific as to more specific than we were in the charter as to one of the goals of this. I just put that out there for discussion. I don't have the language in mind. Maybe I should. I wanted to see what other people thought about how specific to get in that purpose statement. Versus having the board come together and come up with their own specific, I was thinking we would come up with their charge. And I'd like to be more specific than is provided. I don't know what other people think of that, or what feedback anyone has, or on any other topic for this, really. But
I felt that the purpose statement was sufficient, but I certainly can understand why we would want to have a charge that emphasizes the importance of diversity in our government. And I would probably add to that, adding opportunities for public participation as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. I think it can feel obvious that if we're discussing how to go to wards or districts and that sort of thing, that we're really looking for that more connection with the community.
Right.
But I think being obvious about it is more clear about it. It's a good idea.
Are you saying by acknowledging wards and districts that?
Well, part of the chart, part of the mention was, this is some of the things, but not some, but not all of what they'll look at. It's, do we go from our current at-large to wards or districts? And,
Yeah, that's verbatim from the
Verbatim,
charter,
right.
exactly how it's worded there. Yeah.
and some of this will, for transparency's sake, some of the exploration will be some sort of mayoral system, council of government. The mayoral can be, weak mayor, strong mayor, which is, elected as mayor as the chief executive versus basically this role that I have, but being a quote mayor, all kinds of things in between.
And just to give a little historical context, the idea of wards or districts was something that was discussed a very long time ago as part of the Essex Governance Group conversation. And one of the findings and recommendations of that report was that we form neighborhood assemblies.
Yeah.
And so that could be a conversation that's included in the discussion of wards or districts. It doesn't have to be an official voting mechanism, but it could still be a formation of a way for public to participate more. So I would hope that once this committee is formed, that they would look at some of the prior reports that have come out through the work of the community and bring them back up to the table.
Yeah, because I think you're right. A lot of work has been done.
Yeah.
Overall, as a larger community.
Mhm.
Yep.
Sorry, Virginia, you're about to say.
Is it worth mentioning that specifically in this purpose statement that those efforts would be reviewed as background documents?
I don't know that you need to be that prescriptive, but knowing that there have to be, what is there, 2 city councilors on this committee?
Yeah.
I think that would be our responsibility to make sure that happens.
And I will say that on the ward district conversation, it was pretty interesting looking if we had merged with the town, and how you would make those districts. And there was
Yeah.
quite a lot of conversation looking at how you could capture some rural, semi-rural, and Vermont,
Yeah.
what I call Vermont urban, in some slices.
They're different now.
It's very different trying to look at this community. So by bringing up those themes of like, we want to make sure these that I brought up earlier, it's really hard to do that the way our community is laid out, to ensure, for instance, that we don't have a wealthy neighborhood and a not wealthy neighborhood separated, and presumably if they're wards, occasionally at odds.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to get that sort of theme in this document so that that's an underlying thought process.
Is there any intention behind this committee to have some guidance or expertise from people who, will we be relying on VLCT or Claudine, or who will be providing whatever reading material the committee needs in the historical context, and that, because some of us have been around the block on this topic multiple times, but others have not, and committee members may not be familiar with, the process that we all went through to get to where we are today.
Yeah.
So it would be probably wise to at least have somebody in the background that might be able to help with resources and background information.
Yeah. Well, certainly this committee will be staffed.
Okay.
And still sorting out who that might be, who that will be when we start to see all the work plans come together. And then we don't, I'm trying to think in our current budget, if we have any actual dollar amount for professional services in addition to that. I don't think that we do, but I can go back and check. But yeah, somebody will definitely be staffing this and providing background information and lead.
Yeah, I feel like that was something that I feel like now I probably should have brought up in the last budget round, because now I'm thinking, should this committee have a budget? We did not, as far as I know, budget for this.
I think we definitely
specifically,
did the
over and above
stipends.
stipends, but
Yeah.
I just want to say that I agree with the direction you're heading, the theme here, all of that. I think when I read this statement, I think what the concern that I had, and I know that it says, but not limited to, is that by putting these themes there, it puts some attention and focus on these particular themes versus, again, the open-ended, what do you want our governance to look like? With the intention that it represent the diverse nature of our community, it create the environment so that diversity has a voice at the table, all of those things. I just want to make sure that we don't create or invite a limited view on how they proceed and go forth.
Oh, you mean by specifying some examples?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And I agree with you. We probably should, because especially when you said about VLCT, right away, I'm like, oh yeah, we probably should have planned for that. And oops.
Well, VLCT
so-
is a service that we subscribe to, so
Right.
we would probably not be charged for that. But if we wanted to engage, for example, the Essex Governance Group, we had Susan Clark, who is a nationally renowned expert on local government. She helped us with the Essex Governance Group report, and she was an invaluable resource. She comes as a consultant.
Right.
So, but VLCT does not. So, and they
Okay, I
have
didn't
plenty
know
of
if there was going to
experts.
be an above and beyond with VLCT. So, but
Yeah, I mean, there may be expenses, right, in terms of like having another expert come in and just simply present on one or two things that happen either around the country or potentially in other similar democracies where they might have costs associated, and I certainly didn't think of that during budget season. So back to your point, sorry, are you saying to remove because if I remember right, this is, like Regina said, this is straight out of the charter.
Yeah.
So are you just suggesting removing the examples and
I'm
making it more broad, or?
Yeah, I suggest removing the examples while emphasizing the point of, again, reflecting the community, you know, having that lens by which we're trying to create this governance.
This is in the charter. We can't remove it from the charter.
Totally understand. And I think back, again, I can't go back in time and I wasn't there at the time. I think this would have challenged me back then. I think, again, and I understand the language does preface with, but not limited to. But I think about how people look and read language, and it's one of the things that calls out to me as, oh, is there intent here that they'll read between the lines that we don't intend?
I just think that's the responsibility of the city councilors on the committee to make sure that doesn't happen, as well as the members of the committee themselves in this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, reading it section or, you know, segment by segment, you know, form of government, elections of officials by, I think, like you said, I think the counselors and the group and the staff, even after just this conversation, I think would understand where and what we're looking for. But I
I'm
definitely
not
see your
going
point.
to hold this up for that. Again, we're good. I'm sure you get it.
Do you feel, I mean, do you feel comfortable putting something together from what we just talked about, or should we do it now?
I feel comfortable putting a sentence together from what you folks talked about tonight, and then we can just put it on consent for the next meeting.
Okay.
If that works.
Are there any other thoughts or concerns or any other feedback for this?
Oh, Regina, it looks like you need us to choose 7 or 9.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Oh,
Yep.
pardon me. Ooh, well, I mean,
Might want to wait on that until we see who's interested. I mean,
up to 9?
up to 9. Yeah. Because we might have a whole bunch of people that want to get involved. I've actually heard a couple folks say, when are you going to do that?
Yeah,
So
sure.
Yeah.
I think we
And then
might,
If there's, to include 2 city council members, so 9 is
right, so that
inclusive
brings
of,
it
so
down to
that's
5 if
7.
you go with 7,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about just up to 9? And we'll really push for that. And that
I don't-
doesn't keep them from getting started.
Yeah.
If a month goes by and we've got 5, then we can start
Right.
background work and
Yeah, and part of the thinking of it, it's helpful to have a bigger group because you can almost do subcommittee
Mhm.
work, and especially within this time frame, it's
Mhm.
pretty. It's in the grand scheme of things, tight.
Yeah.
Well-
Within 1 year, so 9 can be a helpful subcommittee.
I do want to just put out there, and when I read this was one thought I had. You know, we purposely left some time for the city to transition before we had this conversation. And you know, again, this was something I wanted in, others did too, but like, I wouldn't be opposed to like being a little looser with the time frame if it meant waiting a year to get the answer. I mean, I don't feel like rushing is mandatory. If it feels tight, you know, so I just want to put that out there. If other people are good with that, that's fine. We can always extend it. If they're making great progress and they're not going to be ready by November 1st, then they're not ready, and that's fine. Sorry.
No, I was going to say there's nothing written in stone that we have to be ready for the next town meeting.
Right.
You know, we can judge on the progress, and then if
Yeah.
it looks like they're going to be ready, then great.
My understanding was that the committee had to be stood up within a certain amount of time, not
Right,
that.
but not finished.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
So we can leave the goal there.
Sure.
And see how it goes.
an ideal finish of, but
Okay.
not necessary to.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll just add that you have a lot of things you want to do. The more time we give this, the more time it will
Absolutely.
Mhm.
absorb.
Sure.
That's kind of the feedback.
And-
That's the kind
and
of
you
feedback
might-
I want.
We're
Seriously.
We might find that.
Yes, and putting a little
They'll-
fire under it would be great. Just wanted to.
No, I get that.
I completely appreciate what you're saying and
You want a
keenly
tighter
aware.
timeline, Regina?
Yeah,
I resemble
Yes.
that.
And honestly, you might find that November 1st of 25 isn't unrealistic, you know, but I don't know how
think it
deep.
will be.
Yeah, but I don't want them to feel constrained to that so that
Right.
things are rushed, because this is something that will continue, you know, from that point forward, should it.
Yeah.
And
might-
so,
Can I ask about the council numbers? Just again, based on what you said, Regina, I just want to go a little bit deeper just for a second. Because, you know, with the subcommittees and that level of work, would it be better for us to maybe do up to nine residents and plus 2 council members versus 9 to include 2 council members? I don't know if the larger committee starts to become too onerous, like where is that sweet
That's a lot.
spot
yeah.
to achieve the work, be able to do these subcommittees and, you know, again, have
Find
a,
agreement.
11
Thoughtful
is,
Find
11 is,
Agreement, and there may not be a need for subcommittees either.
well, you do
Making
acknowledge
this
that the
such-
agreement will be based on a majority vote, essentially. So
Right.
they don't have to complete consensus, but that would be nice.
it's a lot of voices to work through.
I
Not
would-
that-
I would say up to 9, including the councilors.
The upside here is none of that is prescribed in the charter. So they do the first half of their work and they decide they need subcommittees and it's worthwhile. They can just say that to us and we can say, oh, look, here's 3-4 more people that want to come in and help you do this work.
Mhm.
And there they are. And nothing changes and nothing's harmed. I also think that as we get into budget season in a couple months, we should think about the second half of this committee's work. And will it take engagement money? Will it take legal money? Will it take like public hearing kind of food all the way up to experts?
I want to emphasize that the end result, this is an advisory committee. Whatever this committee decides has to come to this body, and this body decides whether or not to move forward on it. So just want to be very clear. Whatever they come up with isn't set in stone. It might require a vote by the entire community, so.
Well, get that. It was one of the questions I had in my head about this, about that use of that word advisory, because I think our intention was to go through this particular process and come out with a recommendation that we would act upon, not that we would just potentially vote down. Like, it's stronger than advisory, but it's not.
I would want to
You know.
just be, I would be concerned if something unusual came out of the committee. And that's happened in the past in our community, that recommendations have come that have been supported by large numbers of residents.
Yeah.
They even went to the legislature and were found to be illegal. So this body needs, and this is like the level of our authority, is this kind of conversation. So I would want to ensure that this body had the final say.
Yeah. I'm not advocating for changing that in any stretch. It was just a matter of like whether or not using the word advisory didn't give the community confidence that we were going to take up this very seriously. Because I think this is a very serious topic with serious implications. Totally understand the potential for problems, but I think for the most part, unless it's clear and obvious problems, I would be inclined to move forward with what comes out of this.
Most likely that'll be the result.
Yeah.
And there are methods that aren't too onerous if this board, whoever's on it, decides not to follow them for those items to be put on the ballot anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, it's not a tremendous hurdle to petition for a charter, for a vote on a charter item. On a
And we'd
ballot.
have to go through public hearing processes anyway, so there'd be additional participation after it got back here, so.
Should we?
I'm not
build
saying
in
that's
that layer?
desirable. I'm just saying this was a conversation when the charter was written as a joint community and when the charter was revised as a separate community. That this conversation happened and that the advisory portion was sort of the result.
Do you think we should build in the mechanism by which whatever the advisory that comes out of this, the potential next obvious step is that it become a ballot item for consideration for the community.
Because they might not recommend something that needs to be on the ballot. There's a variety, anything could come of this. Like they could say, well, we're not going to do wards, we're going to do neighborhood assemblies. It doesn't necessarily have to go on the ballot.
If we don't get a
It doesn't need to be
resolution,
a charter change. It's either whether something needs to be changed in the charter or not.
Right.
you know, we could be right at the beginning of a new contract with our manager and they come back and say, you know, we want a strong mayor in a year and a half. And we have to figure out how we manage that. That just can't necessarily run to the ballot immediately. There's all kinds of little considerations that were brought up when we put this in. And again, the process for getting any ballot item is already laid out in state statute and the charter. So I don't know that we need to repeat it here.
Oh, I guess maybe
Were you just talking intention?
I'll be clear. Maybe I need to clear up what I was saying a little bit, just from, I think the way I was intending it was like whatever comes out of this becomes basically an advisory ballot item, not just.
Oh, yeah, no.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm just asking, but you know, because we could get the recommendation from them, we can hear that, but it could also then become an advisory ballot item so that we can get the full community vote on it and then act upon that information.
I see what you're saying. And I can also harken back to some of the conversations around how we had to vote to separate in the charter. And depending on what they bring back, which we could tailor so this doesn't happen, but depending on what they bring back, that could be a number. That could be a very lengthy ballot with individual things having to be spelled out for an advisor to get an advisory opinion on that would just be overwhelming depending on when it potentially overwhelming. It could be 3 things.
Right.
It could be 8 things.
Yeah.
And on top of a normal ballot.
Yeah.
And then there'd be confusion of, are we doing this? Or are we just telling we want to do this? Then we have to educate everybody differently and do different public hearings. And, you know, I think it overcomplicates where it's clearly in our charter that the intention is to make this serious. Otherwise it wouldn't be in the charter.
Right.
You know, like it wasn't just, we'll do this, don't worry about it. It's in the charter. Like it's a requirement that we can't get out of and on purpose. And so I think that transmits an intention. And it'll be up to this board, whoever's on it, right, to take that responsibility, I think. But I understand what you're asking now. I didn't quite get it before.
Yeah.
Sorry. But there were, Elaine or Regina, correct me if I'm wrong, but there were some vagaries about how we had to warn some of those things. There was talk sometimes of, depending on what we put in the charter, do we have to put each item on the ballot?
Yep.
Or is it you're voting on this document versus are you voting on every element? And I mean, it was
Yeah,
I remember that.
it's-
it was a headache.
Yeah, it's every element, though there is an option if it's like, you know, it's a entire huge change.
Yeah.
There is an option to sort of warn that in a different way, but basically, yeah.
Yeah. And then if they pick 1 or 2 things, but the third critical part is missing,
Yeah.
then how do you put, you
Yeah,
really have a
exactly.
hard time putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. And then you're, anyway.
Right.
So the things we needed to agree upon then at least are just on the numbers, sounds like up to 9,
Up to 9
to
is,
include 2 counselors.
yep. And it sounds like I am putting in some kind of statement that talks about the desire for this committee to look at becoming a representative government in the way that the community, the diverse population that we have would be represented on the future
Or at
governance.
least making our best efforts to do that, because we can have this conversation and make decisions and changes to accommodate that, but that does not mean we will accomplish it. So I just want to make sure we're not promising something that no municipality can deliver.
I can send you, I can clean this up and send it as an example.
Okay.
For you to consider pulling from. So there is a recommendation here on page 15 at the bottom. Should we change this to, do we need this now or are we just going to approve it? We don't need it now.
Yeah, if you,
consent, right?
yeah,
Okay.
I think we have time that I can just work this language and then put it on consent next week, and then you can easily pull it off if it's not,
Okay.
the language isn't quite right.
Great.
Thanks for getting us started on that.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Is there anyone, there's no one in the room, so I'm going to ask if there's anyone online that has any questions or comments on this topic for council at this point. I'm not seeing any. Okay, I think we'll move on. The next two items we have are executive sessions, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Great. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passed unanimously. Manager report, council member comments.
So just a reminder that we did revise the council meeting schedule a little bit come October, November, December. So just so folks are aware, October 30th, we're meeting on the 5th Wednesday instead of the 23rd because of a holiday on the 23rd. And then the second meetings in November and December are canceled because of holidays as well. So,
Will we be getting an email or something with that information?
yeah, we can. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's no way.
It's also online at essexjunction.org/.
I could look for that. I
Sorry.
could do that.
Yeah, but it's all right. I understand.
It took me a long time to keep getting that October thing straight in my mind. And I was like, if I can't keep this straight, other people can't keep this straight. So, okay. Crescent Connector. It is almost fully functional as designed. At the end of the day today, Maple Street new intersection was still flashing. Park Street was supposed to be fully operational, although it might be flashing. And potentially, completely coincidentally, we had a fuse blow. Here it is. Thanks to Tim Miller.
Special delivery.
In the Five Corners signal hardware. So that went down today for a little bit. So really continuing 3 years in a row here on this construction project to really appreciate everybody's patience. And we are doing our best to really get wrapped up here and get this project done. Community newsletter. We've Ashley started that and got it out on the 6th of September. And that was on Friday. By Monday morning, she had about 56 additional subscribees to the newsletter. So, and I didn't get an update. I meant to get an update from her today. I imagine the numbers went up from that. So that's very exciting. We've been wanting to do that for quite a while. So glad we finally have ability to get that going. We do have it printed in a version of it printed in the Essex Reporter as well. And we will continue to see how that goes. The hope is we can get it printed a number of times to get the word out and can over time analyze whether it makes sense to continue to do that or just have folks switch over to email access. So that's great. And then talked about GMT a little bit already earlier, but just a reminder to the community that GMT is hosting a public forum tomorrow afternoon, September 12th from 4 to 6 p.m. at Brownell.
Thank you. You took everything I wanted to say, so thank you for that. No, I was really excited to see the newsletter. And I've shared that with a bunch of people. I'm glad the subscriptions are going up. I think with Crescent Connector, I just really appreciate the community's patience. I appreciate staff, the engineers' perseverance through this. I feel like with something like this, the last 100 yards is always the hardest and the most difficult to get through.
It's that punch list.
That's a stupid punch list. But many people are cautiously optimistic. Some have completely bought into the speed with which you can get, especially from Park Street to Maple and Main. I think long-term, this will be good. It's just going to take a lot of getting used to. So thank you for the management through this.
Yeah.
And Public Works and Hamel Engineering, ECI, landowners, council, community development, everybody. It's been a long road. No pun intended. It was bad. Didn't intend it.
Long road for a
Swear to
pretty
God,
short
I
road.
didn't mean that. Don't
Oh.
trip on a short road.
I'll add Essex Police Department and Officer Greg
Yes,
standing in 5 corners today.
yes, yes, very much so. And our own Tim Miller for
Found myself
inadvertently spending the day.
found
I think you
myself
got
fascinated
some
by
fun too.
traffic. I would believe it.
You
It
got
was
some
it
sun.
was great. I learned a lot. It was very informative.
Great. That's all. I don't have anything else. Unless anybody else does.
I just want to acknowledge publicly the GMT issue. It has me strongly concerned. I really do want to just double down on people participating in that conversation. I want to just acknowledge, while there is going to be, if this were to come to pass, there is going to be some impact on Essex Junction. But the broad potential impact is amazing to me. And I just hope people participate. One of my strongest concerns, as was acknowledged earlier in the public, and I've been talking about this now for a few days, is if you cut lines, how is that going to impact SSTA and therefore some of the most vulnerable people in not just our community, but in all these communities are going to potentially be strongly impacted. So please get out 4 to 6 tomorrow, Brownell.
You know, the last time GMT held a hearing for cuts to various lines, they did it here, and it was standing room only here, and they said it was the largest hearing they'd ever done.
I
So it
am
wouldn't-
worried about Colberg Room.
Wouldn't surprise me if there's plenty of people there tomorrow, and it's a good thing.
Let's fill 2 floors.
Well, the other thing people like, I mean, Regina said this earlier, I think, I think one of the other great way to do this is to really participate and connect the junction. Because we get a lot of feedback from the community about what they want to see for that corridor and what they want to see and how much it's going to depend and how much we're fulfilling the state's request to take on this density in this building and putting it exactly where the transit is. That, presenting that to the state and saying, how can you not fund this? We're doing exactly what you asked. Will put them in a really difficult position, I think. And so anyway, I think it's going to be a long haul, a long road for a short road. What is that?
Long
We should go because we still have more work to do and this is
Yes.
getting bad.
Yes.
So the motions for the executive session start on page 18.
I've got it here. I move that the city council enter into executive session to discuss a personnel evaluation pursuant to 1 VSA 313A3 to include the city council and the city manager. I move that the city council make the specific finding that premature disclosure of the contractual matters.
Can we do but one motion at a time?
Yeah, there's a reason. Let's do
Okay.
the first one first.
Noted.
Second, I'll second your first motion.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. It's unanimous. And the motion 2 of the next one should say, spell out everyone, but
No,
Or would-
I'll just abstain
you'll abstain.
Yeah.
Okay.
and explain.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
So motion 2. I move that the city council enter into executive session to discuss a contract pursuant to 1 VSA 313A1A to include the city council and city manager.
I'll second that too. Do you want to explain now or
All
do you?
those in favor? I'll abstain.
Okay.
I'll explain.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Abstain. I'm going to abstain from this vote because the topic of the executive session involves a topic that I have a conflict of interest with. So I will participate in the first executive session, but then I will depart and not participate in the second executive session.
Okay, so we're gonna go down the list for individual votes at this point since we're not unanimous, and we're partially online. So, Marcus, Aye. Raj Chawla, aye. Tim?
Aye.
My
Abstain.
alphabet was wrong. Amber?
Aye.
Great, thank you. 4-1. 4 ayes, 1 abstention.
401.
401, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a weird score. All right. We are in executive session. I don't believe we will be coming back with any decisions, so we'll adjourn from executive session. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Recording stopped.